The Lord thundered to Joshua, "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now rise, lead this people across the Jordan." This was no gentle request. It was a cold, divine decree. Lead an untrained generation against giants and iron-walled kings with one weapon: faith. Be strong. Be terrified, yet courageous. Do not deviate from my law, not an inch to the left or right. I am with you. Now, under that crushing weight, Joshua faces the abyss. Behind him, a nation trembling with ancient fears. Ahead, walls so thick they mock the sky. And above him, a voice that demands everything. Get ready. In 3 days we cross. They face a river parted by unseen hands. They march in eerie silence around Jericho for 6 days. On the 7th, the trumpets shriek, but faith has a crack. One man hides forbidden plunder, and his greed reeks of death. Israel has sinned. I will turn my back until the evil is purged. As enemies surround them, lies fester. The Gibeonites arrive with moldy bread and deceptive, worn-out sandals, and Joshua must decide between righteous judgment or mercy. The sun hangs suspended over Gibeon, the moon frozen above Achan. It did not set for an entire day. This is more than a conquest. It is the collision of divine justice and human ruin. As the land is carved up, every stone records the carnage. Every step echoes one question. When you finally hold what God promised, will you still truly obey him? Shadows lengthened. Joshua commanded them, cut them down from the trees. Cast their corpses into the mouth of the cave where they cowered. Heavy stones sealed the tomb, a monument that remains to this day. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the voice of the Almighty descended upon Joshua the son of Nun, who once served Moses. The Lord declared, "Moses is dead. Now prepare yourselves and this entire nation to cross the Jordan River into the land I am granting them. Every patch of ground where you set your foot is yours, as I promised Moses. No foe will survive standing against you all your days. Just as I was with Moses, I will be with you. I will never fail you, nor abandon you to the darkness. Be strong and courageous. You are the one to lead this people into the inheritance promised to their ancestors. Be strong and deeply courageous. Obey my law. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so you may find success wherever you march. Keep the book of the law ever present. Meditate on these words day and night, ensuring you do everything written within. Then you will prosper. Have I not commanded you this? Be strong and courageous. Do not fear, and do not lose heart, for the Lord your God walks with you." Joshua commanded the officers, "Go through the camp. Tell the people to gather their supplies. In 3 days you will cross the Jordan to seize the land the Lord your God is giving you as your own." To the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, Joshua spoke, "Remember the command of the Lord's servant Moses. The Lord has granted you rest and given you this land. Your families and your livestock may remain in the territory east of the Jordan. But every fighting man must cross over armed ahead of your fellow Israelites. You must fight until the Lord grants your brothers rest, just as he gave it to you, until they too possess their own inheritance. Only then may you return to occupy your own land, which Moses gave you east of the Jordan toward the rising sun." They answered Joshua, "We will do everything you command, and we will go wherever you send us. We obeyed Moses. We will obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Anyone who rebels against your authority or refuses to obey your word will be put to death. Just be strong and courageous." Joshua secretly dispatched 2 spies from Shittim. "Go," he commanded, "and scout the land, specifically Jericho." They arrived and entered the house of a woman named Rahab, a prostitute, where they took refuge. Word reached the king of Jericho. Some Israelites have entered tonight to spy out our land. The king sent an ultimatum to Rahab. Bring out the men who entered your home. They are spies sent to map our destruction. But Rahab had already hidden the two men. She lied. Yes, the men came here, but I didn't know where they were from. At dusk, when the gates were closing, they left. I know nothing. Hurry, pursue them. You might still catch them. But in truth, she had brought them to the roof, burying them beneath stalks of drying flax. The king's men rushed toward the Jordan crossings. As soon as the pursuers exited, the massive city gate was slammed shut. Before the spies could sleep, Rahab climbed to the roof and whispered, I know the Lord has given you this land. We are paralyzed with terror. Everyone is shaking. We heard how the Lord dried up the Red Sea when you fled Egypt. We heard what you did to Sihon and Og, those two Amorite kings you utterly destroyed. When the news reached us, our hearts turned to water. No one has the stomach to fight you. The Lord your God is God of the heavens above and the earth below. So please swear by the Lord to show kindness to my family. Give me a sign, a guarantee that you will spare my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all they possess, saving us from the coming slaughter. The men swore, if you keep our mission secret, we stake our lives for yours. When the Lord grants us the land, we will treat you with mercy. Then she lowered them by a rope through the window. Because her house was built directly into the city wall, she lived in the barrier itself. She warned them, go to the hills, or the pursuers will find you. Hide there for 3 days until they give up. Then go your way. The men replied, we will honor our oath. But when we return to invade, you must tie this scarlet rope in the window from which you lowered us. Gather your family inside your house. If anyone steps outside, their death is on their own head. We will be innocent of their blood. If your house is harmed, we bear the blood. Break this seal, and we are innocent of our oath. She whispered, I agree. She pushed them out into the dark. That crimson cord tied to her window became a beacon of salvation. The men vanished into the hills for 3 grueling days. Pursuers scoured the terrain, desperate and blind. They found nothing. Finally, the 2 men crept down, crossed the riverbed, and crawled back to Joshua. They confessed every detail. The land is ours, they warned. A heavy, suffocating dread has already paralyzed every soul living there. Before dawn, the camp at Shittim fell silent. They marched to the Jordan, waiting before the rushing water. For 3 days, the officers haunted the camp with their orders. You will watch for the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God. When the priests carry it, you move. You follow the presence of the Almighty. This path is unknown to you. Keep your distance nearly half a mile back. Do not approach the ark. Its holiness is a consuming, terrifying weight. Joshua commanded them to be holy, for tomorrow the Lord would perform wonders that would shatter the earth. He turned his eyes to the priests. Carry the ark. Lead the people into the unknown. They lifted the terrifying burden and stepped forward. The Lord spoke to Joshua, Today I crown you before all Israel. They will know that my hand rests upon you just as it rested upon Moses. Command the priests now. Step into the churning water of the Jordan and stand still. Joshua gathered the tribes and commanded them to tremble and listen to the words of the living God. You will see that the living God stalks among you, ready to devour the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, and Perizzites. The Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites will fall. The ark of the Lord of all the earth is moving. It leads you directly into the Jordan. Choose 12 men. As soon as the priests, the feet of the carriers of the Lord of all the earth, touch the Jordan, the waters will betray them. The rushing current will stop rising into a jagged heap. The people broke camp. the priests holding the covenant of the Lord, leading the march toward the river. The Jordan was a raging harvest-time flood, but the moment the priests' feet touched the water, the upstream flow died. It simply ceased to be. The waters stacked into a towering, impossible wall far upstream at the town of Adam near Zaratan. The path to the Dead Sea turned to dust. The riverbed lay exposed and barren as the people crossed, ghosts moving opposite Jericho. The priests stood frozen on dry, cursed earth in the river's heart, holding the ark while the nation poured past them, a steady, silent migration across the grave of the river. When the last soul had crossed, the Lord spoke to Joshua. "Choose 12 men, one from every tribe. Command them to pull 12 stones from the river's gut exactly where the priests stand. Carry them and leave them where you camp tonight." Joshua summoned the 12, one for each tribe of Israel, and issued the command, "Walk into the center of the Jordan, before the face of the ark of the Lord. Each man must hoist a stone, a marker of this terrifying covenant, for all generations. When your children point to these stones and ask, 'What is this?' you will tell them, 'The Jordan was sliced in two before the ark of the Lord. The water died at its command.' These stones are a permanent scar, a memory that will never fade from Israel." The Israelites obeyed. They dragged 12 stones from the river's belly exactly as the Lord had commanded Joshua. They hauled them to the camp. Joshua also buried 12 stones in the riverbed right where the priests had stood. They are buried there, still hidden under the returning currents to this day. The priests stood motionless in the riverbed until every command was fulfilled, while the people fled across in a panicked, hurried rush. As the last of the nation crossed the ark and the priests emerged, watched by the entire shivering assembly, the men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh led the way armed for the slaughter, just as Moses had demanded. 40,000 soldiers crossed in the shadow of the Lord toward the plains of Jericho. That day the Lord made Joshua a titan in the eyes of all Israel. They feared him all his days, honoring him as they had honored Moses. The Lord spoke to Joshua, "Command the priests to emerge." Joshua called out, and the priests climbed out of the Jordan, clutching the ark of the covenant of the Lord. The moment their feet touched dry land, the Jordan roared back to life, reclaiming its path and surging at flood stage. On the 10th day of the first month, the people climbed out of the river and made camp at Gilgal on the edge of Jericho. Joshua set the 12 stones in Gilgal. He told the Israelites, "When your children ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them Israel walked over the Jordan on dry, dead ground. The Lord your God withered the river before your eyes. He did exactly what he did to the Red Sea, drying the deep until we passed over. He did this for a reason, so that every creature on earth knows that the hand of the Lord is a weapon of power, and so you will tremble before him forever." The Amorite kings and the Canaanite kings along the coast heard that the river had been murdered. Their hearts turned to water. They had no breath left to fight. The Lord told Joshua, "Take flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." Joshua forged the flint blades and performed the rite at Gibeon. Why? Because every man who came out of Egypt, every warrior had perished in the wilderness. Those who left were circumcised, yes, but the generation born in the wasteland, the 40 years of wandering, were not. The men of war had all died because they defied the voice of the Lord. The Lord swore they would never see the land promised to their ancestors, that lush, fertile ground. Instead, he raised their children. These were the ones Joshua marked with the covenant. They had gone uncircumcised during the long desert trek. Now the nation healed in their camp. The Lord told Joshua, "Today I roll away your Egyptian shame." That place is still called Gilgal. On the 14th, while camped on the plains of Jericho, the people kept the Passover. The next day, they tasted the harvest of the land, roasted grain and bread. That very day, the manna vanished. No more heavenly bread for Israel. That year, they lived off the bounty of Canaan. Near Jericho, Joshua saw a figure standing before him, sword drawn. He approached and demanded, "Are you with us or them?" "Neither," the figure replied. "I am the commander of the Lord's army. I have arrived." Joshua fell prostrate in terror, whispering, "What is your command, my lord?" The commander said, "Remove your sandals. This ground is holy." Joshua obeyed, trembling. Jericho's gates were bolted shut in pure, paralyzing dread. Nothing moved. The Lord spoke to Joshua, "Look, I have delivered this city, its king and its warriors, into your hands. March around it once daily for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry ram's horn trumpets before the ark. On the 7th day, circle the city 7 times, while the priests blow those horns. At one long, piercing blast, command the people to let out a thunderous shout. The walls will collapse, and you will storm in." Joshua summoned the priests. "Take up the ark of the Lord's covenant." 7 priests must carry the ram's horns before it. He ordered the people, "March. The armed guard leads the way." Joshua finished. The 7 priests began to march, their horns wailing in the holy presence of the Lord. The ark followed, flanked by the vanguard and the rear guard, while the horns never stopped. All the while Joshua commanded, "Silence, not a word. Do not shout until I give the order." The ark circled the city once. Then they retreated to the camp to wait in the dark. Joshua rose at dawn. The priests took up the ark, the horns sounding again, with the guard marching ahead and behind. The trumpets wailed relentlessly. They circled once that 2nd day and returned to their camp. 6 days passed like this. On the 7th, they rose at dawn and marched 7 times. 7 laps in a single day. At the 7th pass, the horns blared. Joshua roared, "Shout! The Lord has delivered this city to you." The city is devoted to the Lord's judgment. Only Rahab the prostitute and her house survive for keeping our spies safe. Stay clear of the cursed things. If you take them, you invite ruin and destruction upon our camp. All gold, silver, and metal belongs to the Lord's treasury. The trumpets screamed, and the people unleashed a deafening roar. The walls buckled and tore apart. The army surged forward, consuming the city in an instant. They slaughtered everything, man, woman, beast, in a frenzy of divine judgment. Joshua turned to his spies. "Go to the woman's house and rescue her and all she holds dear." The spies crept in and pulled Rahab and her entire family from the slaughter, placing them in safety far outside the camp. Then they put the city to the torch. Everything burned, save for the metals which went to the Lord's treasury. Joshua spared Rahab because she had shielded his men, hiding them from the madness of Jericho. She lives among us even now. Joshua pronounced a chilling curse. "Cursed be the man who rebuilds this city. He shall pay with the life of his firstborn to lay the foundations, and his youngest to set the gates." The Lord was with Joshua, and his legend grew. But Israel faltered, keeping back what was devoted to destruction. A man named Achan, from the tribe of Judah, stole the forbidden treasure. The Lord's wrath burned hot. Joshua sent men to Ai, east of Bethel. "Go," he commanded, "spy out the land." They returned, whispering, "It is a small town. 3,000 men will suffice to crush them." But they marched up and were shattered by the men of Ai. The enemy chased them, slaughtering 36 men. The hearts of the Israelites melted, turning to water in their chests. Joshua tore his robes and collapsed in the dirt before the ark. The elders beside him, dust thick upon their hands. Joshua wailed, "Lord, why bring us across the Jordan only to deliver us to the Amorites? We should have stayed behind." Lord Israel has fled from their enemies. The Canaanites will hear this and swarm us. They will blot us out. What then for your great name? The Lord thundered. Stand up. Why are you groveling? Israel has sinned. They broke my covenant and stole what was set apart for destruction. They lied, burying the forbidden loot among their own things. That is why Israel falters before their enemies. They are cursed, fleeing like cowards because of this hidden rot. I will not walk among you while this filth remains. Get up, purify the people, and warn them of what must be done. Tomorrow hear the word of the Lord. Israel, you harbor things destined for destruction. You cannot stand against your foes until you purge this evil from your camp. At dawn you will present yourselves by tribe. The Lord will mark the guilty one. That tribe shall come forward, family by family. The Lord will single out a family, then a man. The one caught with this forbidden plunder will be burned, he and everything he owns. He has violated the covenant of the Lord and committed a sickening crime in Israel. At daybreak, Joshua summoned the tribes. The tribe of Judah was marked. He brought them forward, and the family of the Zerahites was chosen. He brought the Zerahites forward, and Zabdi was caught. Joshua narrowed it down man by man until Achan, son of Carmi, stood exposed. Joshua commanded, My son, give glory to the God of Israel. Speak the truth. Hide nothing. Achan confessed, It is true. I have sinned against the Lord. This is what I did. I saw a beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels. I wanted them, so I took them. They are buried in the dirt inside my tent, with the silver at the bottom. Joshua sent men, and they raced to the tent. They found it all just as he said, the goods buried beneath the silver. They dragged it out, bringing the evidence before Joshua and all Israel. They laid it out before the Lord. Then Joshua and the people seized Achan, the silver, the robe, the gold, his sons, his daughters, his cattle, donkeys, sheep, his tent, and everything he owned, dragging them to the valley of Achor. Joshua asked, Why have you brought this disaster upon us? The Lord will bring disaster upon you today. Then all Israel stoned him. They burned the bodies and piled rocks over them, a massive, haunting monument that stands to this day. The fierce anger of the Lord finally turned away. That place is known as the Valley of Achor, the Valley of Trouble, ever since. The Lord told Joshua, Do not fear or lose heart. Take the whole army and march on Ai. I have delivered the king, his people, his city, and his land into your grasp. You will destroy Ai and its king as you did Jericho. This time you may keep the plunder and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush. Joshua and his soldiers prepared for war. He selected 30,000 brave warriors and sent them out under cover of night. He ordered, Set an ambush behind the city. Stay alert and out of sight. Be ready. I and the rest of the men will approach the city gates. When they charge out as they did before, we will retreat. They will chase us, thinking they have won again. Then you rise from your hiding place and seize the city. The Lord your God will deliver it into your hands. Once you take the city, burn it. Do exactly as the Lord commanded. Now go. I am giving you the orders. The men moved out to their ambush point between Bethel and Ai. Joshua remained that night with the main force. At first light, Joshua mustered his men. He and the elders led them toward Ai. The entire army marched on the city. They camped north of Ai, a valley separating them from the city. Joshua had stationed 5,000 men in ambush to the west. The main force held the north, while the trap was set to the west. That night Joshua descended into the valley. When the king of Ai saw them, he and his men rushed out early to meet Israel in battle, looking toward the Arabah. He was blind to the ambush waiting behind the city. Joshua and the Israelites feigned fear, letting themselves be driven back toward the desert. The men of Ai took the bait, chasing Joshua and his men further from the city. Not a single man remained in Ai or Bethel. They were all obsessed with the pursuit. The city stood wide open as they ran after Israel. The Lord commanded Joshua, "Point your javelin toward Ai. I will give the city into your hand." Joshua stretched his javelin toward the city. Instantly, the men in ambush rose from their position and sprinted into the city. They seized it and set it ablaze. When the men of Ai looked back, they saw smoke choking the sky. They had nowhere to turn. The Israelites who were fleeing turned to fight. When Joshua saw the smoke rising, he and his army turned and slaughtered the men of Ai. The ambush force swept out of the city, trapping the men of Ai in a deadly pincer between two Israelite armies. They struck them down. They captured the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. After Israel finished killing the men in the fields and wilderness, and every last one had fallen to the sword, the Israelites returned to Ai and killed everyone remaining. 12,000 men and women died that day. Joshua did not lower his javelin until every soul in Ai was destroyed. Israel kept the animals and plunder for themselves, just as the Lord had ordered. Joshua burned Ai, leaving it a permanent heap of ruins, a desolate scar to this day. He hung the king of Ai on a tree until evening. At sunset, he was taken down and thrown at the city gate. They piled a massive heap of rocks over him, which remains to this day. Joshua then built an altar to the Lord on Mount Ebal, exactly as Moses had commanded. He built it with uncut stones, just as the law of Moses instructed. They offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. There Joshua inscribed the law of Moses onto the stones in the sight of the Israelites. All Israel, native and foreigner, along with the elders, officials, and judges, stood on either side of the ark, flanking the priests who carried it. Half stood before Mount Gerizim, and half before Mount Ebal, just as Moses had commanded for the blessing of the people. Joshua read every word of the law, the blessings and the curses, exactly as written in the book. There was not a single command Moses had given that Joshua did not proclaim before the entire assembly and every stranger dwelling among them. When the kings west of the Jordan heard the slaughter, across the hills, the coast, and all the way to Lebanon, Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, they rallied for war. But the people of Gibeon, trembling at the fall of Jericho and Ai, plotted a deception. They played the part of travelers from a distant land. They loaded donkeys with worn-out sacks, cracked, patched wineskins, and shredded sandals. Their bread was a crumbling, moldy ruin. They approached Joshua at Gilgal, pleading, "We come from a far country. We beg you, make a covenant of peace with us." The Israelites hesitated, suspicious of neighbors. But the Gibeonites lied, insisting, "We are your servants." Joshua pressed them. "Who are you? Where do you hail from?" They spun a tale of a distant land, claiming they had heard the terror of the Lord your God. They recounted the devastation in Egypt and the destruction of the Amorite kings, Sihon and Og. They claimed their elders ordered them to take supplies, journey forth, and beg to serve Israel. "See our bread," they urged. "It was hot from the oven when we left. Now look, dry and moldy. Our skins were new, now shattered our clothes, and sandals rotted by the long road." The Israelites inspected the supplies, foolishly neglecting to seek the counsel of the Lord. Joshua signed the pact to let them live, and the leaders sealed it with a solemn, binding oath. 3 days later, the truth crawled out. The Gibeonites were neighbors hiding in plain sight. The Israelites marched on their cities immediately. They reached Gibeon, Kephirah-Beeroth, and Kiriath-Jearim. Yet the army could not strike, for the leaders had sworn by the name of the Lord. The assembly raged against their leaders, but the elders stood firm, declaring, "We swore by the name of the Lord, we cannot touch them." We must let them live to avoid divine wrath for breaking our oath. The leaders decreed, "Let them live, but bind them as woodcutters and water-bearers for the entire congregation." Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and demanded answers. "Why have you deceived us? You lived in our midst. Now you are cursed, destined to serve the house of my God forever." They cried out to Joshua, "We knew the Lord your God commanded Moses to annihilate this entire land and all its inhabitants. Terror for our lives drove us to this. We are in your hands. Do whatever you deem right." Joshua spared them from the sword, but bound them to eternal servitude as fuel gatherers for the altar of the Lord. To this day they serve. When Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard Joshua had leveled Ai, just as he had razed Jericho, he also learned the Gibeonites had defected to Israel. Fear gripped him. Gibeon was a royal city filled with mighty warriors. Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, summoned the kings of Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, screaming, "Come help me destroy Gibeon for betraying us to Joshua." The 5 Amorite kings, Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, united their forces surrounding Gibeon in a siege of iron. The Gibeonites shrieked for help to Joshua at Gilgal. "Do not abandon your servants. Come quickly and save us. Every Amorite king has united against us." So Joshua and his elite warriors, the finest of his host, surged forward. The Lord roared to Joshua, "Fear them not. I have delivered them into your grasp. None shall survive." Joshua marched through the night, a sudden strike of divine terror. The Lord threw the Amorites into a panic, and Israel slaughtered them at Gibeon. They chased them toward Beth-horon, striking them down as far as Azekah and Makkedah. As they fled down the slope, the Lord rained lethal, massive hailstones from the heavens. More perished by the ice of heaven than by the swords of Israel. That day of divine slaughter, Joshua cried out to the Lord before all Israel Sunday, "Halt over Gibeon, moon. Stand frozen over the valley of Ajalon." And the sun stood still. The moon stayed its course until the enemies were crushed. It is written in the book of Joshua, "The sun held its place in the sky for a full day." There has never been such a day when the Lord obeyed a man. Truly, the Lord was fighting for Israel. Joshua returned to Gilgal, while the 5 kings fled to hide in a cave at Makkedah. Someone alerted Joshua. "The 5 kings are trapped in the cave at Makkedah," Joshua commanded. "Roll massive stones over the mouth and post guards. But do not wait. Pursue your enemies and strike them from the rear. Do not let them reach their cities, for the Lord has delivered them to you." And so Israel decimated them completely. Only a few reached their walled fortresses. The army returned to Joshua, and not a single tongue dared stir against the Israelites. Joshua ordered, "Open the mouth of the cave and drag those 5 kings to me." They hauled them out, Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. He called his commanders, commanding them, "Come close. Put your feet upon the necks of these kings." They obeyed. Joshua looked at them and said, "Do not fear. Be strong and courageous. This is what the Lord will do to every enemy you face." He struck them dead, hung them upon 5 trees, and left their bodies to rot until evening. That same day Makkedah fell. Joshua shattered it, erasing the king and every soul within. Total silence. He dealt with the king of Makkedah just as he had with Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel turned their blades toward Libnah, a city marked for judgment. The Lord delivered it into their hands. They spared no one, purging the king and his people, meting out the same finality they brought to Jericho. From the ruins of Libnah, they descended upon Lachish. They besieged it, and on the second day the Lord surrendered it to their fury. They slaughtered everyone, duplicating the terror they had inflicted upon Libnah. Even Horam, king of Gezer, who dared bring his army to save Lachish, was cut down. Joshua left no survivors. From there they marched upon Eglon. They surrounded the walls and struck. By day's end, Eglon was captured and emptied of life, just as Lachish had been. Then they set their sights on Hebron. Hebron fell. King's subjects and surrounding villages all consumed by the sword. Nothing breathing remained, echoing the destruction of Eglon. Then Joshua and the army retreated to Debir. They struck with relentless force, taking the city, its king, and every surrounding settlement. Everyone perished, just as they had at Hebron and Libnah. Joshua conquered the entire southern expanse, the hill country, the Negev, the western slopes, a total chilling devastation of every king. No survivors were left in that campaign, for the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for them. From Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, from Goshen to Gibeon, the land fell to Joshua's blade. Every king, every kingdom, crushed in a single stroke, because the Lord fought for Israel. With the blood spilled, Joshua and the army returned to the camp at Gilgal. But then Jabin, king of Hazor, received the news. He sent urgent pleas to the king of Madon, the king of Shimron, the king of Akshaph, and the northern kings of the hill country, the Arabah, south of Chinneroth, the western foothills, and Naphoth Dor. Canaanites from east and west, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, from the hills and the Hivites, under Mount Hermon, the call went out. They gathered a sea of soldiers as countless as sand upon the shore. They came with a thunder of horses and a forest of chariots. These kings united their armies and encamped at the waters of Merom, ready to crush Israel. The Lord spoke to Joshua, "Do not tremble before them. By this time tomorrow, I will deliver them all dead into your hands. Hamstring their horses and turn their chariots to ash." Joshua and his army fell upon them suddenly at the waters of Merom. The Lord delivered them into Israel's grasp. They chased them to Greater Sidon, to Misrephoth Maim, and eastward to the valley of Mizpah. Not one escaped. Joshua obeyed the Lord. He hamstrung the horses and burned the chariots. Turning back, Joshua captured Hatzor and killed its king. Hatzor, the head of all those kingdoms, was doomed. They put every soul to the sword. Not a single person survived. Then they set Hatzor aflame. Joshua took all those cities and their kings. He executed them all just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. Only the cities on hills were spared the fire, save for Hazor, which Joshua burned. The Israelites plundered the cities, taking the livestock for themselves, but the people were slaughtered entirely. No survivors. Joshua fulfilled every command given to Moses. Moses had charged Joshua, and he obeyed. He left nothing undone of all the Lord had commanded. He seized the entire land, the hill country, the south, the land of Goshen, the western foothills, the Arabah, and the mountains of Israel. The land bled as it was taken, from Mount Halak, which rises toward Seir, all the way to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon, below Mount Hermon. He captured every king and put them to death. Joshua warred for a long time. No city sought peace except the Hivites of Gibeon. Israel took everything else in battle. The Lord hardened their hearts to face Israel in war, inviting their own annihilation. He showed no mercy, destroying them utterly, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Joshua purged the Anakites from the hill country, from Hebron, Debir, Anab, and the mountains of Judah and Israel. He wiped them and their towns from the earth. No Anakites remained in the territory of Israel. Only in Gaza-Gath and Ashdod did a remnant survive. Joshua claimed the entire land exactly as the Lord had promised Moses. He gave it as an inheritance, dividing the spoils among the tribes, and the land finally had rest from war. These are the kings defeated east of the Jordan, from the Arnon Valley to Mount Hermon, including the eastern Jordan Valley. Sihon, king of the Amorites in Heshbon. He ruled from Aroer, on the Arnon Valley's edge, through the valley's center, to the Jabbok River, the border of the Ammonites. He ruled the eastern Jordan Valley from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea, toward Beth Jeshimoth, and south beneath the slopes of Pisgah. They also defeated Og, king of Bashan, one of the last Rephaim giants who lived in Ashtaroth and Edrei. He governed Mount Hermon, Salakah, all of Bashan to the border of the Geshurites and Maccathites, and half of Gilead meeting the border of King Sihon of Heshbon. Moses and the Israelites had already broken these kings. Moses gave their lands to the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Now the kings defeated west of the Jordan. Joshua and the Israelites crushed those west of the Jordan, from Baal-Gad in the Lebanon Valley to Mount Halak near Seir. Joshua divided their land among the tribes of Israel. The conquered lands included the hill country, the western foothills, the Jordan Valley, the mountain slopes, the wilderness, and the Negev. These were the lands of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and the king of Jericho, the Jordan Valley mountain slopes, and the wild Negev. These lands belonged to the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, and the doomed king of Jericho, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon, the king of Gezer, the king of Debir, the king of Geder, the king of Hormah, the king of Arad, the king of Libnah, the king of Adullam, the king of Makkedah, the king of Bethel, the king of Tappuah, the king of Hepher, the king of Aphek, the king of Lasharon, the king of Madon, the king of Hazor, the king of Shimron-Meron, the king of Akshaph, the king of Tanakh, the king of Megiddo, the king of Kadesh, the king of Jokneam in Carmel, the king of Dor, the king of Goyim in Gilgal, the king of Tirzah. 31 kings in total brought to ruin. Joshua was ancient now. The Almighty spoke, "You are aged, yet vast territories remain unclaimed. Behold the lands that wait, all the Philistine regions and the Geshurite lands from the Shihor east of Egypt to the border of Ekron northward. This remains Canaanite terror. The 5 Philistine lords of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, plus the Avites in the south. All the Canaanite earth, from Mira of the Sidonians to Aphek to the Amorite borders. The land of the Gebalites and all Lebanon eastward from Baal-Gad under Hermon to Lebo-Hamath. All inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Misrephoth-Maim, all the Sidonians. I myself will drive them out before Israel. You must allot this land as an inheritance just as I commanded. Distribute this territory to the 9 tribes and the half-tribe of Manasseh. The others had already received their portion, east of the Jordan as Moses, the servant of the Lord, decreed. Their borders stretched from Aroer on the edge of the Arnon Valley, including the city within the valley, the plateau of Medeba to Dibon, every city of Sihon the Amorite king who ruled in Heshbon, up to the Ammonite border, Gilead, the territory of the Geshurites and Maccathites, all of Mount Hermon, and all of Bashan as far as Salakah, the kingdom of Og in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and Edrei. He was the last of the Rephaites. Moses struck them down and drove them out, yet Israel failed to expel the Geshurites and Maccathites. They dwell among Israel to this very day. But to the tribe of Levi, Moses granted no inheritance. The fire offerings to the Lord, the God of Israel, remain their inheritance as he promised. Moses gave the tribe of Reuben their portion by their clans. Their borders ran from Aroer by the Arnon, including the city in the valley, the entire plateau by Medeba, Heshbon, and its towns, Dibon Bamoth Baal, Beth Baal Meon, Jahaz Kedemoth, Mephath Kiriathaim, Sibma, Zareth Shahar. On the hill in the valley Beth Peor, the slopes of Pisgah and Beth Jeshemoth, all cities of the plateau, the kingdom of Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon. Moses defeated him, and the Midianite chiefs Evi, Rechem, Zur-Hur, and Reba princes allied with Sihon, who haunted that land. The Israelites also put Balaam, son of Beor, the diviner, to the sword. The Jordan served as the Reubenite border. This was the inheritance of the tribe of Reuben, with their towns and villages. Moses gave the tribe of Gad their inheritance. Their territory included Jazer, all the towns of Gilead, and half the land of the Ammonites, as far as Aroer near Rabbah, from Heshbon to Ramat Mizpeh and Betonim, and from Mahanaim to the border of Debir in the valley of Beth Haram, Beth Nimrah Sukkoth, and Zaphon, the remnant of Sihon's kingdom. The Jordan acted as their western boundary up to the Sea of Galilee. This was the inheritance of the tribe of Gad, with their towns and villages. Moses had granted the half-tribe of Manasseh their inheritance. Their territory stretched from Mahanaim through all of Bashan, the entire kingdom of Og, including the towns of Jair and Bashan, 60 cities in all. Half of Gilead Ashtaroth and Edrei, the royal cities of Og in Bashan, were given to the descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh. These were the lands Moses distributed on the plains of Moab, east of the Jordan, across from Jericho. But to the tribe of Levi, Moses gave no inheritance. The Lord, the God of Israel, is their inheritance as he promised. Now the division of the land west of the Jordan began. Eleazar the priest, Joshua and the tribal heads assigned the portions. They cast lots, as the Lord commanded through Moses, for the 9½ tribes. Moses had already settled the 2½ tribes east of the Jordan. The descendants of Joseph became 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. The Levites received no land, only cities to dwell in with pastures for their livestock. Thus Israel divided the land, just as the Lord commanded Moses. Then came Caleb's claim. The people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal. Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, spoke, "You remember what the Lord told Moses concerning us at Kadesh Barnea? I was 40 when Moses sent me from there to scout the land. I brought back a report true to my convictions. My brothers filled the people with terror, but I followed the Lord my God with my whole heart." That day Moses swore an oath, "The land your feet have walked upon shall be your inheritance and your children's forever, because you followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly." Now the Lord has kept me alive these 45 years, since he spoke to Moses while we wandered the wilderness. Look at me. I am 85 years old. I am as strong today as when Moses sent me out. I am still ready for battle. Give me this hill country the Lord promised that day. You heard of the Anakites, their fortified cities. With the Lord's help, I will drive them out, just as he said. Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron. To this day, Hebron belongs to Caleb. Caleb, son of Jephunneh, stood firm, for he followed the Lord wholeheartedly. Hebron, once called Kiriath Arba, named for the giant Anakite king, became his. Finally, the land rested from the horrors of war. The borders of Judah were carved out, stretching south to the desolate wilderness of Zen. That southern boundary began at the edge of the Dead Sea, pushing past the treacherous Scorpion Pass. It crawled toward Zen, skirted south of Kadesh Barnea, past Hezron and Adar, then looped toward Karka. It clung to Asmon, meeting the brook of Egypt and bleeding out into the Great Sea. That was the south. The eastern line was the salt-choked Dead Sea, ending where the Jordan flows in. The northern line pulled away from the Jordan, climbing toward Beth Hogla, creeping north of Beth Araba, and reaching the stone of Bohan. The border clawed its way up toward Debir from the valley of Achor, swinging north to Gilgal opposite the pass of Adumim south of the gorge. It pressed on to the waters of En-Shemesh, ending at En-Rogel. Then it scaled the valley of Ben-Hinnom, skirting the southern ridge of the Jebusite stronghold, Jerusalem. It crested the hill west of the Hinnom Valley at the northern edge of the Rephaim Valley. From that peak it tracked toward the spring of the waters of Nephtoah. It hit the cities of Mount Ephron, then dipped toward Baalah, known as Kiriath Jearim. It twisted west from Baalah to Mount Seir. It ran along the northern slope of Mount Jearim, touched Chesalon, dropped to Beth Shemesh, and crossed to Timnah. It skirted the northern ridge of Ekron, turned toward Shikharon, and reached Jabneel. The line died at the sea. The vast Mediterranean formed their western wall. These were the borders carved for the clans of Judah. As the Lord commanded, Joshua granted Caleb his share in the heart of the enemy, Hebron. Arba was the forefather of the Anakites, the giants. Caleb struck, driving out the 3 sons of Anak, Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai, from their fortress. He marched on the inhabitants of Debir, then called Kiriath Sepher. Caleb swore, "Whoever attacks and takes this city, I will give him my daughter Achsah." Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's brother, seized it. The prize was claimed, and Achsah became his wife. When she arrived, she pressed Othniel to ask her father for land. She dismounted, and Caleb asked, "What do you want?" She whispered, "Grant me a special favor. You gave me land in the Negev. Now give me the lifeblood springs of water." Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. The towns of Judah followed. This was the inheritance of the Judahite clans. The southernmost outposts bordering Edom were Kabzeel, Eder, Jagur, Kena, Dimona, Adada, and Kadesh. Hazor Ithnan, Ziph Telem, Bealoth Hazor, Hadattah, Kerioth, Hezron, which is Hazor, Amam Shema, Molada, Hazar, Gada, Heshmon, Beth Pelet, Hazar Shual, and Beersheba. Beziothaiah, Bala, Eim Ezim, Eltolad Kesil, Horma Ziklag, Madmana Sansana, Lebaoth, Shilhim, Ain, and Rimmon. 29 cities in all with their villages. In the western foothills, Eshtaol, Zorah, Ashna, Zanoah, En-Ganim, Tapua, Enam, Jarmuth, Adullam, Soko, Azekah, Sharaim, Adithaim, Gedera, and Gederothaim. 14 cities. Zenan Hadashah, Migdal Gad-Dilion, Mitzpah, Joktheel, Lachish, Bozkath, Eglon, Kabon, Lamas, Kitlish, Gederoth, Beth Dagon, Nama, and Makkedah. 16 cities. Libnah, Ether, Ashan, Iftha, Ashna, Nezib, Keilah, Achzib, and Marashah. 9 cities with their villages. Ekron with its surrounding settlements. From Ekron to the sea, all those near Ashdod with their villages. Ashdod, its towns and its villages. Gaza with its towns and villages stretching to the brook of Egypt and the Great Sea. In the hill country, Shamir Jatir Soko, Dana Kiriath Sana, which is Debir Anab, Eshtemo, Anim, Goshen, Holon, and Gilo. 11 cities. Arab, Duma, Eshan, Janim, Beth, Tapua, Afekah, Humta, Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, and Zior. 9 cities. Maon, Carmel, Ziph, Judah, Jezreel, Jokdeam, Zanoah, Cain, Gibeah, and Timnah. 10 cities. Hauhul, Beth Zur, Gedor Maraph, Beth Anath, and Eltekon. 6 cities. Kiriath Baal, which is Kiriath Jearim, and Rabbah. 2 cities. In the wilderness, Beth Arabah, Midden Sekaka, Nibshan, the city of salt, and En-gedi. 6 cities. But the people of Judah could not drive out the Jebusites in Jerusalem, so the Jebusites dwell there among the people of Judah to this day. The lot for Joseph's descendants stretched from the Jordan near Jericho, east of the city's waters. It climbed from the wilderness into the hill country of Bethel. From Bethel, also known as Luz, it ran to Ataroth near the Archites. It turned west to the Japhletites, down to lower Beth Horon and Gezer, ending at the Great Sea. This was the inheritance of Manasseh and Ephraim. For the clans of Ephraim, the border began at Ataroth Adar in the east, and rose to upper Beth Horon. It pushed west to the sea. On the north, it started at Mikmethath, turned east toward Tanath Shiloh, passing east of Genoa. From Genoa, it dropped to Ataroth, and Nara touched Jericho and ended at the Jordan. From Tappuah, the line went west to the Kana ravine, ending at the sea. This was the inheritance of the Ephraimite clans, along with isolated towns within Manasseh's territory. But the people of Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites in Gezer. The Canaanites still live among them, trapped in forced labor to this day. Then the lot fell to Manasseh, Joseph's firstborn. Machir, his son, and father of Gilead, was a man of war. He had already claimed Gilead and Bashan across the Jordan. Land was divided for the rest of his clans: Abiezer Helek, Azriel, Shechem, Hepher, and Shemitah. These were the male descendants of Manasseh, son of Joseph, by their families. Zelophehad, son of Hepher, left no sons, only daughters. Their names were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. They approached Eleazar the priest, Joshua, and the leaders. They demanded, "The Lord commanded Moses to give us an inheritance alongside our brothers." And Joshua obeyed, granting them land as the Lord commanded. 10 portions were set aside for Manasseh in addition to Gilead and Bashan, because the daughters of Manasseh received land just as the sons did. The rest of Manasseh's people inherited Gilead. The border ran from Asher to Mikmethath, east of Shechem. The border dragged southward to the inhabitants of En-tappuah. Manasseh held Tappuah, yet Tappuah itself, nestled on their border, fell under Ephraimite control. The line pushed south along the Kana ravine. These cities belonged to Ephraim, though they sat trapped like islands within the borders of Manasseh. Manasseh's boundary traced the ravine's northern rim to the sea. The south belonged to Ephraim, the north to Manasseh. The western edge was the sea. Asher loomed to the north, Issachar to the east. Inside their territories, Manasseh claimed these jagged outposts: Bethshan Elam, Dor, Endor, Tanakh, and Megiddo, with their surrounding hamlets. But the Manassites could not purge them. The Canaanites clung to those cities like a curse. Years later, as Israel's shadow grew longer and their power solidified, they shackled the Canaanites into forced labor, yet they never fully scoured the land of them. The house of Joseph cried out to Joshua, "Why grant us only one meager portion as our inheritance? We are a multitude blessed by the Lord, with overwhelming numbers." Joshua snapped back, "If your numbers are so vast, march into the forests. Clear the timber in the hills of the Perizzites and Rephites. Since the hills of Ephraim are too cramped for you, make room." The sons of Joseph countered, "The highlands aren't enough." The Canaanites in the valley wield iron chariots, a wall of metal. They hold Bethshan, its surrounding towns, and the Jezreel Valley. Joshua rebuked the tribes of Joseph. "You are a massive, iron-willed people. You will not settle for one share. You will have more. The hill country shall be yours. It is a dense, tangled forest, but you have the strength to clear it. It will belong to you. You will drive out the Canaanites despite their strength and those iron chariots of theirs." The congregation gathered at Shiloh to plant the tent of meeting. Though the land lay conquered, 7 tribes still drifted without a home. Joshua stood before them and demanded, "How long will you hesitate to claim what the Lord, the God of your fathers, has sworn to give you? Pick 3 men from every tribe. I will send them to map the wilderness. They shall document its features, carving the land into 7 distinct parts. Then return to me so we may divide it. Judah shall hold their southern ground. The house of Joseph will anchor the north. Once your scouts return with their descriptions, bring them to me. I will cast lots for you before the Lord our God. The Levites hold no land. Their only inheritance is the service of the Lord. Gad, Reuben, and half of Manasseh have already claimed the east granted by Moses, the Lord's servant." So the chosen men prepared to depart. Joshua commanded them, "Go scour the land, record what you find and return. I will cast the lots here in Shiloh before the Lord." The men vanished into the terrain, traversing the cities and dividing the territory into 7 grim, precise portions. They returned to the camp at Shiloh. There before the Lord, Joshua cast the lots, carving up the land among the remaining tribes. The first lot fell to Benjamin. Their territory was carved out, squeezed between the borders of Judah and Joseph. The northern boundary ignited. At the Jordan scaled the northern face of Jericho, surged into the western hills, and died at the wilderness of Beth-aven. It dropped south to Luz, the place called Bethel, and descended to Adaroth-adar, resting on the hill south of lower Beth-horon. The line twisted west, dropping south from a Beth-horon ridge until it reached Kirath-bang, or Kirath-jearim, a city of Judah. This was the western frontier. The southern reach began at the outskirts of Kirath-jearim, stretching to the springs of Nephtoah. It plunged to the foot of the hill facing the valley of Ben-Hinnom, north of the valley of Rephaim, then slid down the Hinnom Valley along the southern shadow of the Jebusite stronghold, Jerusalem. It descended to En-Rogel, then swung north to En-Shemesh, and toward the passes of Adumim, crashing down to the stone of Bohan, son of Reuben. It scraped the northern slope of Beth-Araba and dropped into the Araba. It hugged the northern ridge of Beth-Hogla and expired at the northern bay of the Dead Sea, where the Jordan pours out. This was the southern limit. The Jordan River formed the eastern wall. These were the borders encircling the tribe of Benjamin. The towns for Benjamin's kin included Jericho, Beth-Hogla, Emek Keziz, Beth-Arabah, Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Parah, Ophrah, Kephar, Ammoni, Ophni, and Geba, 12 cities with their villages. Gibeon, Ramah, Beroth Mizpah, Kephirah, Moza, Rechem Irpil, Terala Zelah, Haaleph, the Jebusite city of Jerusalem, Gibeah and Kiriath, 14 cities and their surrounding hamlets. This was the inheritance of Benjamin. The second lot emerged for the tribe of Simeon. Their share was swallowed whole within the vast territory of Judah. Their inheritance was carved out: Beersheba, Sheba Molada, Hazar Shual, Bala, Ezem Eltolad, Bethul, Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Markaboth, Hazar Susa, Beth Lebaoth, and Sharuhin, 13 cities and their villages, plus Ain Ramon Ether and Achan, 4 cities with their villages, and all the hamlets surrounding them as far as Baalath Bir Ramoth of the Negev. Such was the lot of Simeon. Their portion was severed from Judah, for Judah's land was far too bloated for their needs. So Simeon was wedged inside Judah's borders. The land for Zebulun, the third lot, fell to them. By their clans, the border stretched to Sarid. It lunged west to Maralah, brushed Dabbesheth, and hit the stream facing Joknim. It pivoted east toward the sunrise to Kisloth Tabor, climbed to Daberath, and ascended to Japhia. From there it pushed east to Gath-Hepher and Eth-Kazan, ending at Rimmon and turning toward Neah. The boundary hooked north to Hanathon and was cut short at the valley of Ifta-el. It encompassed the cities of Katath, Nahalal, Shimron, Idalah, and Bethlehem, 12 cities with their villages. These were the grounds claimed by the clans of Zebulun. the land for Issachar. The fourth lot fell to Issachar. By their families, the land included Jezreel, Kesaloth, Shunem, Hapharaim, Shion, Anaharath, Rabbath, Kishion, Ebez, Remeth En Ganim, En Haddah, and Beth Pazez. The border touched Tabor, Shahazuma, and Beth Shemesh, expiring at the Jordan 16 cities and their villages. The fifth lot fell to Asher. Their families claimed Helkath, Hali-Beton, Akshap, and Alamelech, and Amad, then Misham. It stretched to Carmel in the west, touching the terror of the valley of Yiphthahel. The border pushed north toward Beth-Emek and Neel, creeping past Kabul. It reached Abdon, Rehob, and Hammon, stretching toward the horror of Great Sidon. The boundary turned to Ramah, the fortified city of Tyre and Hosa, ending at the sea, 22 cities of blood and stone. These were the spoils for the tribe of Asher. Now the sixth lot, Naphtali. Their border began at Heleph, past the oak in Zaananim, to Adami Nekeb and Jabneel, dying at the Jordan. It turned west to Asnath Tabor and Hukok, touching Zebulun and Asher. Their fortresses, Ziddim, Zerhamath, Rakath, and Chinnereth, Adamah Ramah and Hatzor, Kadesh Edrei and En Hatzor. 19 cities in total for Naphtali. The seventh lot was for the tribe of Dan. Their inheritance included Zorah Eshtal, Ir Shemesh, Shalabin, and Aijalon. They claimed Jethlah, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, Eltekeh, Gibbethon, Balath, and Yehud. But the Danites could not hold their ground. They struck Leshem, put the inhabitants to the sword, and seized the land, renaming it after their forefather. This was the inheritance of Dan. Finally, they granted Joshua, son of Nun, his own portion among them. They gave him Timnath-Serah in the Ephraim hills. He rebuilt the ruins and took them as his own. These assignments were decreed by Eleazar the priest and Joshua before the heads of the tribal families. Before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting in Shiloh, the land was divided. And then the Lord spoke. He commanded, "Choose your cities of refuge, a sanctuary for the one who kills by accident, a place to flee from the avenger. When the fugitive reaches the gate, they must cry out their story to the city elders. The elders must grant them shelter. If the blood avenger pursues, they shall not be abandoned. The elders must not surrender the soul who killed without hate. The fugitive must remain in that city, trapped until the trial of the people and the death of the high priest. Only then can they return home." They set apart the sanctuaries Kadesh in the Galilee hills of Naphtali, Shechem in the Ephraim hills, and Hebron in the mountains of Judah. East of the Jordan they chose Bezer, Ramoth in Gilead, and Golan in Bashan. These were the refuges for all, even the foreigner, a final shield against the wrath of the avenger. The Levite leaders approached Eleazar and Joshua. They gathered at Shiloh in the heart of Canaan and spoke. The Lord commanded through Moses, "Give us cities to dwell in with pasture for our herds." The Israelites obeyed, carving out the Levite inheritance from their own. The Kohathites were chosen first. The descendants of Aaron the priest received 13 towns from Judah, Simeon, and Benjamin. Others received 10 from Ephraim and Dan. The Gershonites were granted 13 towns from the tribes of Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and Manasseh. The Merarites received 12 from Reuben, Gad, and Zebulun. All was decided by the casting of lots. These are the cities assigned to the priests of Aaron's line. They were given from the clans of the Kohathites. They received Kiriath Arba, Hebron, in the hills of Judah with its surrounding pastures. But the fields and villages were given to Caleb, son of Jephunneh. To the priests they gave Hebron, the city of refuge, along with Libnah, Jatir, Eshtemoa, Holon, Debir, Ain Juttah, and Beth Shemesh. From Benjamin they added Gibeon, Geba, Anathoth, and Almon. 13 cities for the priests. To the other Kohathite clans they gave from Ephraim Shechem, the refuge in the hills, along with Gezer Kibzaim, and Beth-horon. From Dan they took Eltekeh, Gibbethon, Aijalon, and Gath-rimmon, 10 cities for these clans. The Gershonites received Golan and Bashan and Beeshtera. From Issachar they took Kishion, Dabaroth, Jarmuth, and Engannim. From Asher, Mishal, Abdon, Helkath, and Rehob. From Naphtali, Kedesh, Hamotdor, and Kartan. 13 cities for the Gershonites. The tribes of Reuben and Gad were granted 4 towns each, including the refuge city of Ramoth. Adding Mahanaim, Heshbon, and Jazer, the Merarites inherited 12 towns with their surrounding pasture lands. In total, the Levites received 48 cities. Each stood as a testament that God fulfills every word. The Lord delivered all the promised land to Israel, who finally claimed their inheritance and settled down. Just as sworn to their ancestors, the Lord granted rest on every border. No enemy stood, for God crushed them all. Not one of the Lord's promises to Israel failed. Every single word came true. Joshua summoned the tribes east of the Jordan. He declared, "You kept every command given by Moses, the servant of the Lord. You obeyed my every word and never abandoned your brothers. You remained faithful to the Lord your God. Now that the Lord has granted rest to your kin, return home to the land Moses assigned you, east of the Jordan. Yet guard your souls. Obey the law of Moses. Love the Lord. Walk in his ways and cling to him. Serve him with your whole heart and soul." After blessing them, Joshua sent them home to the lands they held in Bashan. Joshua blessed the others who received land in the west. He told them, "Go home with immense wealth. Take the silver, gold, bronze, iron, and clothing. Share the spoils of your enemies with your own brothers." The tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh departed from the main camp at Shiloh. They traveled home to Gilead, the land assigned by the Lord. Near the Jordan, they built a massive, terrifying altar. Word reached the Israelites that the Reubenites and Gadites had built an altar on the border. The entire community of Israel gathered at Shiloh, ready to wage war against their own brothers. They dispatched Phinehas, the priest, to Gilead to confront the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. 10 tribal leaders joined him. They arrived and demanded, "Why are you turning against the Lord? Why build an altar to rebel? We still suffer for the sin at Peor, which brought a plague upon us all. Are you turning away from the Lord again? If you rebel today, his anger will consume all of Israel tomorrow. If your land feels unclean, come to the Lord's land where his tabernacle stands. Do not rebel by building another altar." Remember Achan? He kept forbidden things, and God's wrath fell on all of Israel. He was not the only one to die. The tribes replied, "The mighty one God, the Lord, knows the truth of our hearts. If we built this to rebel or sacrifice, let the Lord punish us. We only did this out of fear. One day your children will tell ours, 'You have no part in the Lord, for the Jordan divides us.' You might claim we are not part of God's people. So we built this not for sacrifice, but as a witness. We want future generations to know we also worship at the Lord's altar. If they ever deny us, we will show them this replica of the altar built as a witness between us. We would never dream of rebelling or building our own altar for burnt offerings. Only the altar of the Lord our God at his tabernacle is holy." Phinehas and the leaders were relieved. Phinehas declared, "The Lord is among us, for you have not sinned. You saved Israel from his wrath." They returned home. The people were overjoyed, praising God and setting aside their weapons of war. They named the altar, "Witness for the Lord is God." Time passed, and Israel rested, but Joshua grew very old. He gathered the elders and judges, saying, "I am ancient. You have witnessed all the Lord has done. The Lord fought for you and gave you the inheritance of these nations. Whether they are defeated or remain, the Lord will drive them out before you. You will take the land as promised. Be strong and keep the law of Moses. Never deviate. Do not mingle with these nations, nor speak the names of their gods. Do not serve or bow to them. Hold firmly to the Lord, who has driven out nations greater than you. No enemy can stand against you, for the Lord fights for you. Love the Lord your God above all. But if you turn away mingling with the nations that remain among you, know this, the Lord will stop driving them out. They will become your traps, your whips, and your thorns. You will perish from this good land. I am about to die, and you know in your souls that every promise came true. Every word was fulfilled. But if you break his covenant, his promise of judgment will be just as certain. He will tear you from this good land. Break the covenant of your God to serve idols, and his fury will ignite swiftly, consuming you from the soil he gave you. Joshua called the tribes of Israel to Shechem. Joshua gathered the leaders, elders, judges, officials, to stand before my throne. Listen, for the Lord of Israel speaks. Long ago, your fathers, even Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, dwelt beyond the Euphrates, bowing to strange, silent idols. But I took Abraham from that dark land, leading him through Canaan. I multiplied his seed, giving him Isaac, and from Isaac came Jacob and Esau. I gave Esau the mountains of Seir, but sent Jacob and his sons into Egypt. Then through Moses and Aaron I unleashed my terror upon their oppressors. I dragged you out of that house of bondage. When you reached the sea, the Egyptian chariots and horsemen hunted you like prey. You shrieked to me for mercy. I cast a shroud of darkness between you and them, then shattered the deep, drowning your enemies in the waves. You saw my handiwork in Egypt with your own eyes. You wandered the wasteland until I brought you to the land of the Amorites east of the Jordan. They turned their weapons against you, but I delivered them into your grip. I wiped them out, and you took their soil. Then Balak, king of Moab, rose up. He hired Balaam to curse you, but I refused to listen. Instead, I forced a blessing from his lips, and I snatched you from his grasp. You crossed the Jordan and reached Jericho. Its people fought you, as did the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. I crushed them all. I sent hornets to drive them out, not by your swords, but by my hand. I granted you land you never tilled and cities you never built. You feast on vineyards and olive groves you never planted. Now fear the Lord. Serve him with trembling. Cast away the idols your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt. Serve only me. If serving the Lord seems a burden, choose today the gods of your fathers, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you rot. But as for me, my house shall serve the Lord. The people cried, "Far be it from us to forsake the Lord for dead idols." It was the Lord our God who ripped us from Egyptian slavery. He performed terrifying signs before our very eyes. He shielded us through every nation. He drove out the Amorites and all who opposed us. We will serve the Lord, for he alone is our God. Joshua warned them, "You cannot serve the Lord. He is a holy and jealous God. If you abandon him for foreign demons, he will turn and consume you with disaster, despite all the good he has done." They insisted, "No, we will serve the Lord." Joshua replied, "You are witnesses against your own souls that you have chosen him." They shouted, "We are witnesses." Then Joshua commanded, "Purge the foreign gods from your midst, and turn your hearts to the Lord." They swore, "We will serve the Lord our God and obey his voice." On that day, a covenant was sealed. At Shechem, he set down the laws and decrees, recording them in the book of the law of God. He stood a great stone under the oak by the sanctuary. He declared, "This stone shall be a witness, for it has heard every word the Lord has spoken. It will testify against you if you betray your God." Then Joshua sent them home to their inheritance. After these things, Joshua, servant of the Lord, died at 110 years old. They buried him in the hill country of Ephraim, at Timnath-Serah. Israel served the Lord throughout the days of Joshua and the elders who had witnessed his mighty works. The bones of Joseph carried out of Egypt were buried at Shechem in the plot Jacob had bought. This became the inheritance of Joseph's sons. Eleazar, son of Aaron, died and was laid to rest at Gibeon, given to his son Phinehas in the mountains of Ephraim. Now listen. After every war, every command, every moment of divine terror and grace, what did you learn from the book of Joshua? What verse haunts you? What weight will you carry into your own life? Tell me in the comments. We are not reading history. We are living the legacy, and there the weight of the coming judgment settled in the silence.